This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. In this special broadcast, we spend the hour with the Jerusalem-based journalist and writer Nathan Thrall. He just won the Pulitzer Prize for his most recent book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy, which tells the story of Israel's occupation of the West Bank through one family's tragedy. The book was published October 3rd last year, just 4 days before Israel launched its devastating assault on Gaza following the Hamas attack on October 7th. Today, we re-air 2 interviews with Nathan Thrall, one just after he won the Pulitzer Prize this month, and another interview recorded just after the book was published in October, when he joined us with Abed Salama, the central figure of his book. We begin with the interview Democracy Now!'s Nermeen Sheikh and I did with Nathan on May 9th, when he joined us from Berlin, Germany. I began by asking him about the day's top story, President Biden's announcement that the U.S. would halt the shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel.
You know, it's too little too late. It is a step in the right direction, but the administration has said that it has not made a final determination even about these paused weapons. Biden said something very important. It's wrong. He also said something important months ago, which is that Israel is bombing indiscriminately, and it's doing that indiscriminate bombing with U.S. weapons. So it is very simple for Biden to end this and to have ended this a long time ago, and it's not by threatening to pause a small portion of the weapons that are coming in. Very early in this war, Israel could not continue to conduct it without resupply from the United States. The United States is fully complicit. I am a U.S. taxpayer, and I am paying to kill Palestinian civilians.
So, Nathan, if you've just mentioned, ending the war, and there was a possibility, a ceasefire proposal earlier this week was accepted by Hamas in a move that was that surprised many, including Israel. The ceasefire, which was negotiated, put together by Egypt and Qatar, and just days earlier, before Hamas accepted the ceasefire on April 29th, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, had said the proposal was, quote, quite extraordinary, generous on the part of Israel, and that Hamas was the only obstacle to a ceasefire. And Israel has now said that the proposal falls far short of its demands, but it's continuing its negotiations in Cairo. So if you could tell us what you think the main points of contention are, and how much that proposal changed from the one that Israel had initially approved, and this one that Hamas has agreed to.
So the fundamental obstacle in all of these ceasefire negotiations has been one central issue, and that is that Hamas has demanded that the hostage exchange be accompanied by an end to the war, and Israel has refused. It says it wants to get the hostages back and to do a prisoner exchange with Hamas and then to continue pummeling Gaza. Hamas and any other party in its place would be insane to accept such a deal. It is the only leverage they have, and they cannot afford to agree to a ceasefire, a so-called ceasefire, that has them relinquish the only asset that they have that Israel wants without a commitment that this is an end to the war. And so the fundamental issue is that Hamas says that the proposal that was given to it does entail an end to the war, a full, sustainable calm that's guaranteed by the United States and other mediators, and Israel says it rejects that. And we have seen the text of the proposal that Hamas has accepted. It is very close to what has been reported on all of the negotiations over the past week, and we haven't seen the text that Israel says slightly differs in wording.
Can you talk about what's going on the ground in Israel? I mean, we just reported that last night hostage families clashed with police in Tel Aviv. 2 people were arrested. One sister of a hostage was hospitalized. Her mother said, "End the war with Hamas." How significant is this movement of hostage families and all their allies, and is that putting pressure on Netanyahu? Do you think he is going to actually engage in this wholesale ground assault on Rafah?
The protests for a hostage exchange deal are a tremendous pressure on the government. And if they grow in size, they will make the current coalition and Netanyahu sweat even more. So they are very significant. But as we have seen, they are not sufficient yet to have gotten Israel to agree to a ceasefire proposal. And so far, Biden's limited threat has not been enough either.
So, Nathan, just to, you have lived in Jerusalem and in Israel for many years, over a decade. We last spoke to you just days before the October 7th attack. If you could begin by talking about your response to Hamas's attack, and then what's unfolded since, whether you were surprised by this, by either the scale of the Hamas attack, and then, of course, what Israel has unleashed on Gaza.
The book tour that I was on began, several days before October 7th, and I was actually in the U.S. and on Democracy Now! With the title character, Abed Salama. He and I had returned from an event on Friday night, and we got the news late that night as it was early morning, Saturday morning in Israel-Palestine. And we were both utterly shocked, and we realized that the entire atmosphere that would be, first of all, the entire atmosphere that his family is living in was about to change radically, and his entire community was locked down immediately, and that the whole region was going to change, not to mention the fact that there would be much more hostility toward the message of this book, and that it would be much more difficult for us to speak. And indeed, many of our events were canceled after October 7th.
And Nathan, could you situate, of course, you've just mentioned your book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. If you could talk about that book, what prompted it, and situate it in the context of what we've seen in the last several months.
Yeah. So, the genesis of the book was really a place of frustration for me in working on Israel-Palestine for many years and watching as a heightened period of violence, like a war in Gaza, immediately brings Israel-Palestine into the news. It mobilizes students, and it gets the attention of the world. And leaders around the world invariably call for a restoration of calm. And what I wanted to write about in this book was that so-called calm, which is anything but calm for Palestinians. It's a system of domination that is extremely bureaucratic and elaborate and has lasted for over half a century. And it is not going anywhere. And so long as we are only seeing bloodshed, periodic bloodshed, and calling for a restoration of the so-called calm that existed before that bloodshed, we are doomed to see that bloodshed repeat. And my intention was to choose something seemingly commonplace, like a bus accident involving a group of Palestinian kindergartners, to describe this system of control and how ordinary people, Palestinians and Jews, living in this area, both navigate through the system that's controlling them and also implement and create this system. And so the idea was to bring our attention to this deeply, deeply unjust system that is fully supported by the United States and its Western allies.
And what was happening, Nathan, in the West Bank prior to October 7th, and now the number of people who've been killed and arrested, the Palestinians, since October 7th?
Prior to October 7th, we had already seen a spike in aggressive behavior from the army and armed settlers in the West Bank. The UN issued a small report at the end of September talking about unprecedented levels of forced displacement of Palestinian Bedouin. And it said that roughly 1,100 Palestinian Bedouin had been displaced in the last year and a half. In the period immediately after October 7th, while all the eyes of the world were on Gaza, an even greater number, more than 1,200 in just the weeks after October 7th, more than 1,200 Palestinian Bedouin were displaced in the West Bank. There has been a surge in violence. There have been hundreds of Palestinians who have been killed, huge numbers who have been arrested, many of them held without trial or charge under so-called administrative detention, which can be held for up to 6 months and then renewed indefinitely. And in general, the restrictions on movement in the West Bank are the worst that they have ever been since the occupation began. It now takes me hours to get to locations that took me a half hour or 40 minutes in the past. All of the jobs, virtually all of them, in the settlements and in Israel, which so many Palestinian extended families depend on. These are the higher-paying jobs for Palestinians in the West Bank. Those have all but disappeared. And so Palestinians are strangled economically. They are strangled in terms of their movement. I just went a few weeks ago to a dinner, an iftar dinner at Abed Salama's home, and his brother, his entire family lives in Anata. His brother lives in Ramallah, and he said he had not left Ramallah since October 7th because the restrictions on movement and also because of the unsafety, the settler attacks and all of the violence that is happening in the West Bank while the world's attention is focused on Gaza.
And so, Nathan, explain, you've said, why are all the discussions about a one-state or two-state solution as the possible resolution to this? Why you think the discussions around a two-state or one-state solution are the wrong discussions to be happening?
You know, these conversations are premised on the notion that Israel eventually has to choose. It has to either give the millions of Palestinians living under its control without basic civil rights. It has to give them either citizenship with equality or statehood. And so many people in the diplomatic community would like to have, as they have been having for decades, debates about what a two-state outcome should look like, whether there should be two states or one state or confederation or what have you. And all of that is an enormous distraction from the reality on the ground, because the fact of the matter is Israel does not have to choose between two states and one state. It doesn't have to choose between giving Palestinians sovereignty or citizenship. It has a third option, which is to continue on the path that it's going down. The path that it's going down is a slow de facto annexation of the West Bank, an absorption of the West Bank settlements in Area C, a takeover of Palestinian land, and a constriction of Palestinians into small, walled-off or fenced-off communities like the town of Anata, where my book takes place, or like Gaza. And so rather than focusing on the reality, which is a movement in the opposite direction of either two states or equality in one state, but rather a deepening of the system of control that leading human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and the UN Human Rights Council and Al-Haq and B'Tselem have all described as a system of apartheid. Rather than addressing that system, Israel would very much like for everybody to debate what would be the ideal outcome. What is the future utopia that we would all like? And let's only address this structural inequality, this systematic domination, once we've all agreed that we've landed on the right, perfect outcome.
Nathan, before we go, we were remiss in not congratulating you on the Pulitzer Prize this week for your book. When you came here, it was...
Thank you very much.
It was 2 days before October 7th. Your book had just come out. You had events up the wazoo. So many of them were canceled. And you're in Berlin right now, in Germany. Germany has been a remarkable scene where you have German police arresting Jewish protesters saying that they cannot criticize Israel. What has happened with your events from Germany to the United States as you raise questions about Israel's war on Gaza?
In Germany, I had an event that was to take place on Tuesday in Frankfurt that was canceled at the very last minute by the Union International Club in Frankfurt. And none of the people who canceled the event had read the book or knew a thing about it. And none of them had or provided any substantive reason for the cancellation. And the same thing was happening to me in the United States. And the reason in Germany is everybody is afraid of being accused of anti-Semitism. And what they're really being accused of is not anti-Semitism, but criticism of Israel that is described as anti-Semitism. And Israel has spent years, Israel and its allies have spent years in the United States and in Germany putting forward a definition of anti-Semitism that includes criticism of Israel, entirely legitimate criticism of Israel, and trying to get around our basic democratic commitment to free speech by describing speech that is entirely legitimate as anti-Semitic. And so that's what's happened here, and who, of course, is the close ally of Israel, the most pro-Israel force here in Germany. It's the far-right party, as we see elsewhere. Ethno-nationalists love Israel as a model for the kind of place they want to become, an ethno-national state that will dominate over people who are not like them.
In this holiday special, we spend the rest of the hour speaking with Nathan Thrall and Abed Salama. Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez and I spoke to them in early October, just after the publication of Nathan's remarkable book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. The book looks at the devastating reality for Palestinians living under Israeli occupation through the lens of a Palestinian father. Abed Salama lives in Anata, a segregated Palestinian neighborhood on the outskirts of Jerusalem that's surrounded on three sides by the 26-foot-high Israeli separation wall. Many refer to it as the apartheid wall. In February of 2012, tragedy struck Abed's family. His 5-year-old son, Milad, died in a fiery bus crash during a school field trip to a theme park. Abed's quest to find out what happened to his son was immediately hindered because he was a Palestinian living on the wrong side of the separation wall. He held the wrong ID to pass Israeli military checkpoints and didn't have the right papers to enter the city of Jerusalem. Nathan Thrall, who lives in Jerusalem, wrote about this tragedy in a remarkable 2021 essay for the New York Review of Books. Juan Gonzalez and I spoke to Abed Salama and Nathan Thrall and aired the interview on October 5th. That was 2 days before Hamas's October 7th attack on southern Israel and the start of Israel's assault on Gaza. Nathan began by discussing why he wrote about Abed Salama and the tragedy of his family.
You know, this event is every parent's worst nightmare and an awful, awful tragedy under any circumstances. But it was made so much worse by the unique circumstances in which it took place, by the fact that the victims were Palestinian, that it took place on a road that is controlled by Israel, patrolled by Israeli police, but on the other side of a separation wall, a 26-foot high concrete wall that separates and segregates tens of thousands of Palestinians from Jerusalem, born and raised in Jerusalem, residents of the same city I live in, but who are cut off from the city that they were born and raised in, specifically because of their ethnic identity. And these people live in the same city as me, but they live an entirely different existence. And the parents of the kids on this bus live in a walled ghetto, encircled on 3 sides by this separation wall, and a 4th side by a different wall that runs in the middle of a segregated road, famously called the Apartheid Road. And inside that walled ghetto, which sits just underneath the manicured grounds of Israel's most prestigious university. You can look down on it from Hebrew University down onto this ghetto with trash being burned in the street because the municipal services are non-existent there, with no sidewalks, roads in total disrepair. When I drive into this area to visit Abed and other families there, I have to pull off to the side and just to let a bus pass on the main artery for tens of thousands of people. I'm rolling down my window and pulling in my side mirror to let a regular bus pass me. And this is just the everyday reality of all of these people. They receive virtually no services from the city that they pay taxes to, and they are forced to prove that they have maintained their residency in the right part of this enclave, or else Israel will strip them of their blue ID, which allows them to travel in and out of Jerusalem, and they live in terror of having this blue ID taken away from them. Some of the parents in this area have green IDs, some have blue, they're all from the same families, and the outcome for them on this day was very different. There were real consequences to having a different colored permit on that day. Abed was one of the parents who wasn't able to go and look for his kid in Jerusalem when he was told that that's where his boy was, and other parents did. There were bystanders, because the emergency services came so very late. All of the kids had been evacuated by just ordinary people in private cars before the first Israeli emergency service provider arrived. And those people themselves drove off in all kinds of different directions depending on what color ID they had and whether they could pass through a checkpoint. And there was total chaos. Parents didn't know where their own children were. And so this awful event allowed me, in telling the story, to describe the entire elaborate system of segregation and subjugation and apartheid in which all of these people live.
Abed, I hate to take you back to that day, but it is such an important story for people to understand. Introduce us to your little boy, Milad, and talk about what happened that day.
Hi, everyone. My son, Milad, he was only 5 years old. He was a cute boy, a cool boy, funny boy, loved the life. So the day before the accident, in the night, he said, "Father, I want to buy some sweets and chocolates for my trip." It is the first trip with the school. So I took him to a grocery around supermarket, and he buy his things and the favorite chocolate, Kinder Kids and juice. And then we go back home. He was very excited to join his friends in the journey, in the trip. So we got to sleep earlier. Next day, I was planning to go to Jericho for a business with my cousin. The weather in the morning was very stormy. So I got up. I didn't see Milad when his mother prepared him and put him in the bus in the car to the school. So after an hour, my cousin came and we took his car in our way to Jericho. Then I received a phone call from my nephew. He asked me if Milad in the bus, Nurul Huda school, in the bus to the trip. I said, I told him yes, he is there. He said, Uncle, there's an accident in Jabba Road. The bus is crashed. So we changed our way from Jericho to Jabba Road in that stormy weather. When we arrived before the accident, the place of the accident, before there is a Israeli military checkpoint. They closed the street before. They didn't allow us to pass with the car. So I jumped out of the car and start running to the place of the accident. In my way up, it's raining and stormy weather. Military jeep passed on me. So I wanted to stop them to take me with them. They didn't take me. So I continue my way to the place of the accident, running uphill. So when I received there was nothing. Only I saw the bus crashed in the side and a big trailer on the other side of the street. So I started asking about what happened to the kids. Where are the kids? Everyone, there was many people around. There was only one fire truck. I didn't see any ambulances at the time. I saw only civilian police officer from the PA. So the main thing at that time, I wanted to know what happened to the kids. Where are they? And start searching and asking, where are they? Where's the kids? So somebody told me that they took them to. Some of them took to Adessa in Karim Hospital in East Jerusalem. Others told me they took them to military space, Israeli military space in around. And others told me maybe they took them to the hospital in Ramallah. So I asked, I met two guys from Jenin. I asked them to take me to Ramallah hospital. They are strangers, I didn't know them. They are allowed to take me. And then they took me to the hospital. When I arrived there, it was very crowded. Many people there, the parents of the victims and police and ambulances, media. It was very crowded, and I started to search in the building of the hospital. So I asked the doctor who is in the in the reception about I'm looking for my son Milad. He was in the accident. When she looked at the list, she didn't find his name. She told me his name is not in the list in this bus. So I started to search in the hospital rooms. I didn't find him. I met other parents who are from our neighborhood. I know him. They already find their kids. They was injured, and I asked them if they if they saw my son or their sons know anything about Milad. Everybody was busy in his own case. So everybody said, no, we didn't find him. So here I started to search where to search. I searched again the same hospital. I didn't find him. Then somebody told me maybe they took him to Hadassah and Karim Hospital in East Jerusalem. I didn't have a permit to pass the checkpoints to Jerusalem. They didn't allow us to pass because I have green ID, Palestinian ID. So I called a cousin of mine who have blue ID and asked him to search in Hadassah in Karim. After maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, he called me back. He said, I searched all the hospital there, Milad is not there. So after 6 or 7 hours, everyone from the parents find his son injured or safe, except me and 7 other 6 families. So a doctor from there came to me and he said, you didn't find your son yet, and we have to take some blood from you to make DNA tests. I asked him why. He said we have 6 bodies for small children and the body of the teacher burned. So he asked me also to call my wife and my son Adam to come to the hospital to take blood from them for the test, DNA test. I called them. It took more than an hour to receive to the hospital. So they took up blood from us. My wife was shocked. I was crying. But at the same time, I was looking at her face and my Adam's son face. They was shocked. She didn't cry until now. I think she's still in shock.
Nathan Thrall, you write about that dangerous road that Milad would die on. You said everyone knew how quickly Israeli forces would descend on a West Bank road the moment Palestinian kids started throwing stones at Israeli soldiers or settlers. Yet the soldiers at the checkpoints, the troops at Ramah base, the fire trucks at the settlements nearby, they had all done nothing, letting the bus burn for more than half an hour. If you can talk about this architecture of separation, of apartheid that led to the beginning, so that what we hear in Abed's story is not just an unfortunate bus crash, but so much of which could have been prevented.
Yeah. You know, the particular series of events that unfolded that day were entirely predictable because of this system of segregation and neglect that exists in this area. And there had been people who had warned of it. There had been previous incidents where tragedy had struck on the other side of this wall, and Israeli services were greatly delayed or even prevented from coming to the area. And so, you know, what the book is showing is not, you know, the passage that you mentioned, those were the words of a man who was screaming at Israeli soldiers that morning after he had almost single-handedly rescued dozens of children. He entered a burning bus repeatedly and pulled kids out of this bus and saved dozens of them. And he was in a state of shock at the end of this, and he was screaming at every person, but particularly at the Israelis, but also the Palestinian emergency service providers at the scene. And he said those words to an Israeli, an Israeli soldier, and he was then summarily beaten for saying what he said. And spent several days in the hospital afterward. But the point is not that the Israelis who were at the checkpoint just next to the accident and didn't come, or at the military base and took just next to the accident and took forever to come. The point isn't that anybody made a deliberate choice to observe a burning bus of kindergartners and do nothing. It's that this entire system was set up to ensure that there would be a very delayed response, that these people live in utter neglect and nobody cares about them.
You also write in the book about the small scorched backpacks on the road after the accident. If you can talk more about the effect of this system on children, which is the power of this. And let me ask, is really your decision to use this example, this bus crash, the horror of the deaths of the children who died in this fiery crash, to show us what's happening in Palestine and Israel?
Yeah, it was a very deliberate choice to choose an incident that, although horrific, you know, is an incident that takes place, the kind of thing that takes place all over the world, is a terrible car accident or a terrible bus crash, and to show what it means for this seemingly ordinary event to take place in this particular place under this system, because the point is that the system itself, the policies that are in place, the wall that encircles these communities, the desire to demographically engineer Jerusalem so that it would have the maximum number of Jews and the minimum number of Palestinians, and to keep for Israel the maximum amount of land, and the entire route of this wall, the way that it snakes around this community and encircles it and traps it in this ghetto, all of that is dictated by this racist logic. And I didn't want to choose to tell a story that would be exceptionalized and that we would look at some particular act of violence and ask about the perpetrators and the victims and why this event took place on this day. I wanted to show the system that is crushing people every day. And it's brought into sharp relief on the worst day of these people's lives, but they are suffering all of these obstacles and all of this pain from this system day in and day out.
Nathan, you also describe in your book not only the total disregard and neglect of the Israeli services to the victims of the accident. You also talk about a week later, a left-wing television reporter, Israeli television reporter, did a story, not so much about the accident itself, but how shocked he was at the reaction of residents, of Israeli residents around the area, the accident.
That's right. Several weeks after the accident, an Israeli journalist, a TV journalist, decided to create a feature about something that had shocked him to his core, which was that many Israelis on the day of the accident, young ones in particular, were writing how happy they were that these children had died. And they were, what shocked the journalist, his name is Arik Weiss, what shocked him the most was that people did it without hiding their identity. They felt so comfortable writing racist posts and celebrating the death of innocent 5-year-olds without masking their true names, and so he decided to create a feature, a TV feature, about these kids, but also who wrote the posts. Most of them were kids, I think, and really what his aim was to, as he says, to show a mirror to his own society and to ask, how did we get to a point where so many young people feel that this is acceptable and aren't afraid even of being caught expressing these views? And they go on, he finds many of the people who posted on that day, and they go on to proudly reiterate the kinds of things that they had written that morning. And the accident was now just over 10 years ago, and we see that the trends that this reporter was highlighting have only gotten worse. And we see, senior ministers in the Israeli government who are openly racist, and when you poll young Israelis, you see they have extremely right-wing views and racist views. So it was a prescient report that he made.
Abed Salama, what has been the response in your community, in your family, to Nathan focusing on this tragedy and the loss of Milad in his book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama?
In the beginning, my family refused, and especially my wife. She refused to talk about, and until now, she refused to talk about this, the accident, and to talk about Milad, our son, until now. So I took this responsibility alone, and I decided to share our tragedy with Nathan. Maybe for 2 reasons. The first one is because I loved all the time to talk about my son. When I remember him and I started to speak about him, about what he was doing, about his laughing, his playing, his drawing. So I loved that. Because of this is the main reason. The second reason, Nathan told me, I will make from your case, from this accident, I will write an article. In the beginning, he wrote it as an article, not a book. And this will help your community, Palestinian community. This article will help them to show the Americans and the people around the world how is the Israeli government treat you as Palestinians. So when he write the article and I read it, and we receive many important comments from around the world, It's a very strong article. He said, Abed, I want to make it as a book. If you didn't mind. Of course, I didn't mind from the beginning. As I told you, I want to spend many times with a person like Nathan talking about my son. When I start to talk about him, I feel that his spirit is behind me, around me. And this time I feel Milad sitting with us here. So I love that. I think, and I hope the book will make some changes and help us as Palestinians to live our lives as all the people around the world. This is what I hope to. Everyone, every father, every who responsible on his family, he wanted only to live in peace and to grow up his children in peace and safe. And as Palestinians, we miss these things, yani. When you go out from your house, or your son go out from his house, you didn't expect him to come back safe, or this is what happened. Because of that, I am happy to share my story with Nathan. I'm here in New York or in America. This is my first time here. So the life here is different. I can see the people here running and playing, working, enjoy. And the kids also. People here taking their dogs around in parks. We miss these things. I want to tell you something. I have a dog, a pit bull dog in my house. I put him in the roof. You know, the pit bull is a strong dog. So I'm afraid to take him down to walk with him the street, because the street is crowded and it's many people. We lived in 130,000 people lived in a small square, like as Nathan told you, it's a small place for 103,000 people live there. I can't walk with my dog in the street. I'm afraid to attack somebody or somebody here or there. When I saw the people here in America walking with their dogs and playing with their kids outside and parking, I actually, honestly, I feel jealous. Yani. I want this life for my children, for my grandchildren also. I hope if anyone from the American government hears me, I hope if you want, we want only justice. This is what we want as a Palestinians in the Palestinian Authority.
And Nathan, let me ask you, you first wrote this essay in 2021 that appeared in the New York Review of Books, headlined "A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, One Man's Quest to Find His Son Lays Bare the Reality of Palestinian Life Under Israeli Rule." The article was 50 pages. It in itself was a book, and then you expanded it to the book. The main title, the same, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama. What did you learn as you expanded this investigation? And we've turned to you for analysis in Jerusalem of what's happening there. What surprised you most, and what affected you most as you went on this journey with Abed?
The book shares just a page or so of text with the article, despite sharing the same title. And the aim of the book is entirely different than the article. The aim of the book is to immerse people viscerally in the lives of Palestinians living on the other side of this wall, and to make them feel and understand what that life is like. And one of the things that struck me more than anything as I was working on it was how much pain there is just beneath the surface in every single Palestinian family. And the book has Abed's name in the title, but it tells the story of many different characters whose lives collided on this day. And, you know, one of the themes of the book is the degree to which this oppressive system touches the most intimate decisions in people's lives. I tell a story of, you know, of Abed's early romance and his first marriage, and at one point he has a job that takes him into the center of Jerusalem, and he is afraid of losing his access to the city because of his green-colored ID. And he and many other people at that time went and sought out wives who had blue IDs or Israeli citizenship. They were choosing marriage partners in order to keep their freedom of movement, in order to keep their jobs. This is the degree to which this huge oppressive system affects ordinary people. I tell the story of a woman, a doctor named Huda Dahbour, who happened to be on her way to treat Bedouin. She worked for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, and she was on her way with her medical team to go and treat a group of Bedouin not too far from the site of the accident, and she stumbled on this horrific site. And she pulled over with her team and helped to rescue children from the bus. And I tell part of Huda's story. And you know, Huda had a boy, a teenage boy, who quite naturally threw stones at occupying forces in his town, outside his school, who were harassing him and other students every day. And at 1:30 in the morning, Israeli jeeps show up and bang on her door and say to Huda, "We're here for your son, Hadi." And she can do absolutely nothing. She stands there with tears running down her face, realizing that the jaws of this state are going to come and snatch her boy and take him away to who knows where. And she spent over 10 days looking just to find what cell he was in, where he was located. And that feeling of utter powerlessness that is one that every Palestinian family feels, powerlessness to protect your own children. So you know, the theme for me, what was most striking as I talked to these families, is how much pain there was, and how much the state had crept into every single facet of their lives.
Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.